Hello and welcome to Talk to Malik Jones. And tonight, my guest is the deputy spokesperson of the APRC party, Mr. Dodou. Dodou, welcome to Talk to Malik Jones.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jones. It's a pleasure and an honor to be on your show, on your program. Definitely appreciate the invite.
Well, very recently, the APRC sought a permit from the Inspector General of Police, and they went all out to declare and make sundry that the government of the Gambia should work alongside the African Union, the United Nations, and ECOWAS to enable the coming back of former President Yahya A.J.J. Jammeh to the Gambia, as was made in a declaration, well, not signed though, but declaration that I myself found out from the United Nations website, from the office of the spokesperson for the United Nations Secretary General. And it stated somewhere around Article 11 or 13, if I'm very right, Mr. Jah will clear me on that, that the president, the former president, can return to the Gambia at a time of his own choosing. This and other issues surrounding the APRC is what I'm going to discuss with my guest here today, who, like I said, is the deputy spokesperson for the APRC. First, let me begin. How was it like to get a permit from the Inspector General of Police?
Thank you once again, Mr. Jones. It was a bit tough, difficult to secure a permit from the government. It was not to our expectation, but on the other hand, we're not surprised to the fact that there were other pressure groups pushing so that the APRC would be denied a permit. That we found, to us, it's normal. Because there are people, no matter what, they don't want to hear about the APRC, talk less to hear activities that is carried out by the APRC. I personally wrote that permit on behalf of the party, signed and stamped. I delivered it personally. About 4 or 5 days before the date, the proposed date, we sent one of our executive members, because when we delivered, they told us that to make a follow-up on the permit, which we did. We sent our deputy chief of protocol, who went there to make a follow-up. He was directed to go to the
records office?
Not records office, the, how would I call it again? Okay, in short, when he goes there, perhaps I'll recall later, when he went there, he was referred to registry again. So he went to registry and they said they're still processing the letter. And what they said is they have numbers on those, on the letter itself, and they'll contact those numbers to inform them whatever this is on the agreed upon.
Okay.
And most of those numbers were my numbers, but I was never contacted until a day, I would say, before the proposed peaceful demonstration. We were invited to Minister of Interior to go and discuss the issue. I wasn't part of those who went, but I was able to call our first deputy party leader, Usman Rambojata, and by then he told me things are negative. But we also put it to them, with or without permit, we're going to go ahead with our demonstrations. Later, they said they will have an emergency meeting and they'll get back to us. And I could say in the evening, it was a call that they made that they will grant the permit, we can go ahead with the demonstration. And the following morning, they will bring the permit to us. That sounds so strange in the history of this country. I don't think that has ever happened, that you apply for a permit, they bring it for you, especially on the very day of your demonstration. To our surprise, that very morning they brought the permit, but they said, or what was mentioned in the permit, we're not going to make any march pass. We will be stationed where we assembled, and we will select some people to go and deliver these letters. When they come back, they will address the crowd.
So in other words, it was restricted.
Exactly. And
how did you feel that it was restricted when people who demanded the constitutionally elected government of President Barrow to be allowed to move freely, and you were restricted? What did you have in your mind?
Definitely, it was a surprise, and I would believe international organizations have a hand in it, because I received a call from the ECOWAS Deputy Ambassador suggesting that when we first took the letters to inform them of our proposed demonstration, like one person took it to their office. So they're again suggesting, if we're going to deliver those letters, let the APRC not go to them with a crowd. They will just prefer 1-2 people to take it to them. So if we receive a permit, you know, agreeing or instructing such, definitely it will ring an alarm. Is it that those people got to them and said they have to do it this way and the government agreed? It could be, I am saying. But we were definitely surprised, and some of our militants were very angry. Why is it that others are allowed to make movement from one place to another, but it comes to the APRC, we were never allowed to do so? Definitely, we don't take it in good faith. Some said, okay, at last we were given a permit, but I would say, on the other hand, we were fooled. I would, you know, coin it as that.
Because you wanted to have a procession.
Exactly.
A peaceful procession from point A to point B, C, and D. Because the letter, I'm sure, well, how many letters did you deliver?
3 letters.
3 letters. In other words, there were 3 places that you were supposed to go. The African Union, ECOWAS, and the United Nations office in this country, if I'm right. Exactly.
And the permit we just stated will march from the Sukuta traffic light to Turntable Burusubi. Then from there, we'll dispatch people to take these letters. We never had any intention to go to these offices in large numbers.
In your application, you stated the route.
Exactly,
the route
exactly. From point A to point B. Okay. Then from there, people will go and dispatch the letters. But they deprive us to make any move. They said, when we assemble, we're not moving an inch. From there, we'll just select people to take these letters. But they knew if they had given us the permit prior to the day, we would not have accepted. This is why they promised to bring it to us that morning when we are already assembled. And at that very moment, it would be very difficult to make changes. They just played a game at us, and, you know, I would say it was a trap, but we learned our lessons from it.
All right. Now, does that show any form of dishonesty? Do you believe in this government that calls for that democracy, that freedom of expression, that freedom of movement, freedom of association? Do you believe in the so-called democracy that they're calling for?
Not the APRC. We always have mentioned it, that we're not part and parcel of this democracy because our rights are always usurped. And even when we want to engage in activities, they always deny us so many issues. I would quote a few, like our accounts being frozen up to date. The government cannot tell us anything about those accounts when they promise that the Janneh Commission will look into them, but we're yet to receive anything positive from them. Neither did it reflect from the findings of the report of the Janneh Commission, which again definitely we put in quotes. Our vehicles were seized up to date, nothing comes out of it. We've been victimized and harassed at certain places, Mankamankunda, in Busumbala incidents and the like. They promise to look into it. We don't get any feedback from government. Yet again, if we want to hold, we call it a peaceful demonstration, and we guaranteed it will be peaceful, and people could attest to it. We did it peacefully. So why should they prevent us from moving from one place to another when others are given and allowed to do so? We've even heard from the victim center who said they're going to have a march from Westfield to the old IEC center, and according to information we gathered, they will be granted that, which means APRC will still be marginalized. It is as if we don't have rights in this country. So when people talk about democracy, we said it's not reflecting on us.
How was it like in sending your letters to the authorities concerned?
We don't have any difficulty in doing so. Hence the people that went, I wasn't part of the delegation, but I watched the videos because they went with journalists and it was covered. Some had it on video. They went to offices and they delivered letters. Except at the AU, the video I saw, they said they can only allow 2 people to take the letter up. That's their protocol, what they said. Then the interim party leader insisted that he must have at least 2 more added because he was with the 2 deputies and the admin secretary. So he cannot take 1 deputy and leave the other. But at the end of the day, I saw 3 of them went up, himself, interim party leader, the 1st deputy, and the admin secretary. The 2nd deputy couldn't make it.
What about ECOWAS and the United Nations?
They didn't have such difficulties for such. They took the letters and it was delivered.
Now, what is the what is the agreement between you and the parties that you have given the letter to? Did they just receive the letter and acknowledge receipt of the letter, or did they say anything to you?
They just receive and acknowledge be receiving these letters, but no promises were made. But we've written to them reminding, so we expect that they will write back to us, or they would either invite us to give us their feedback. So we await for that. If it takes long, we don't hear anything, we'll make a follow-up, and based on their response, we'll sit again as an executive, look into the issue, and we'll see what we're going to do next. It's not like it's game over for now.
Let me take you to the crux of the matter. Why do you want Jammeh to come back?
That's a demand from the APRC militants. We went to Congress in 2018 in Boya. They passed a resolution, and part of the resolution they passed was that we have to make a follow-up on the agreement, that is the joint declaration. The party militants demanded that. We could have done that since we were from the Congress, but everything has protocols. So from there, we've engaged government more than once, and we also engage UN and other stakeholders that were involved. But we saw to it going to them in our small numbers, maybe 3-5 people engaging them. They were not taking us seriously because we never had any positive response from them. They gave us a deaf ear. So we said we cannot be in between the militants and the stakeholders. The militants started suspecting even the executive not doing enough in order to facilitate that. Some even started accusing us, we don't want Jammeh to come back. So we tell them this is about the party. So let's show the whole world that this is the stance of the party. That's when we decided to stage a peaceful demonstration, write reminder letters and take it to them to show them it was not us who were in it, but the party as a whole. This is their stance.
Let us distinguish, and this is causing confusion, let us distinguish an agreement from a declaration.
Exactly.
And this was no agreement between former President Jammeh, the parties concerned, and the government. This was something that was between the negotiating parties that negotiated the departure of President Jammeh. Throw some light on that.
Exactly, that's how it happened. Most people are saying agreement. Some are calling it MOU, because even during the demonstration, I saw some T-shirts that printed respect the MOU. Later, I engaged them and told them this is no MOU. It's a joint declaration. You might call it a joint communique. Gambia, why we putting pressure, or we reminding, especially AU and ECOWAS? Gambia is part of ECOWAS. Gambia is part of AU, and Gambia is part of the United Nations. So that's why they also had that audacity to step in the name of peace to prevail in this country, to make sure they negotiate for the safe exit of the former president. But they also made promise of him coming back, protecting his assets and the like, so which he respected and upheld. That's why there's peace today. Especially if this government said they were not part of it, they've never seen it, etc. Today they could say that. But it wasn't any secret. The whole world knew that people came to negotiate for that. And whatever was documented, it's a binding legal document. That's why you can find it on the United Nations website. Otherwise, why would they put it up their website so that the whole world can know that UN themselves facilitated that? But today the government could say that. But they could have said no yesterday when the negotiations were on. They wanted it. And it's what gave them what they have today. If he has insisted, who knows what type of Gambia would have now. So at least at certain point they should cherish that. And again, some said we were never part of it. And I respond and say you cannot be, because you were never in the country. They all ran away. So how can you be part of something that you're not in the country? But they heard about it. So neglecting it today, throwing it away, we're telling you and AU and ECOWAS that it happened yesterday, yes. Today, nobody knows what's going to happen. And tomorrow again, it could happen to any country, to any other place. What would happen if they want to negotiate the same thing? Would they trust them? Wouldn't they reflect upon what they did with the former president?
So it's a matter of integrity now on these institutions.
Exactly. It is up to them to uphold that, or they will face huge challenges tomorrow when they want to strike the same negotiations with any other country that might be affected. Let's look at the case of Guinea-Bissau. Elections took place, and we've seen people have put petitions or parties, they're challenging it at the Supreme Court. What would come out of it? Again, Guinea-Bissau being part of ECOWAS. For instance, if ECOWAS wants to go and negotiate, if the same scenario repeats, would Guinea-Bissau take them seriously? That's definitely a question mark.
There have been commissions set up by the present government. There's a Janneh Commission, there's a TRRC, you have the victims on the other side. All, according to some of your militants, they believe this is a smear campaign. Others think that this is probing into what Jammeh has left here, a legacy of brutal dictatorship. What are you saying to the people of the Gambia? And are you hopeful that based in this background, in this scenario that is behind it, are you hopeful that the AU, United Nations, and ECOWAS will answer to your call?
Thank you very much, Mr. Jones. That's a very vital question. First, to the commissions put in place, one concluded, which is the Janneh Commission, and we've seen their report and the government white paper, which most Gambians did not take seriously, and some feel it is biased. For me, it was good to look into whatever transpired in the past. As a party, we don't have a problem with that, but it should be done according to law, and it should be executed in a manner that justice will be served fairly. But we don't see that happening. In the midst of their findings, they started selling some of his properties, you know, claiming, giving flimsy excuses like not being able to take care of a herd of cattle. That doesn't justify or warrant for them to sell his properties. And again, in the agreement, it is stated that his properties should be protected. That's why they will never recognize this joint declaration. Because they've already violated it. Saying yes to that would definitely land them into trouble. And some of these assets and properties sold, for us it wasn't done legally. What was sold? To whom was it sold? How much was it sold? You go around and ask Gambia.
There is no accountability.
No accountability, no transparency. And they're bragging about it. And some of these that they put under the president's name, like claiming he has over 300 vehicles, 400 vehicles all under his name. I said that doesn't make sense. What would one person do with that? And I saw evidence of an inventory. These vehicles they claim he owns it. Most of which were state vehicles. Vehicles that were given to ministers, permanent secretaries, the former president and the like. But if they claim that it were state vehicles, they wouldn't have access to sell them. But saying that it was owned by Jammeh, some people will say, yeah, you have to sell it. How can one people have all these vehicles? I would say it was just a game they played. And I challenge them to give us the inventory of the vehicles they said was owned by Jammeh. Let them give us the list, which type of vehicles, how much was it sold for, and who bought those vehicles. I think Gambians should demand for this. Now, coming on to whether what we are requesting for from the international bodies, they would say yes, or they will come to our response. I, for one, I am doubting it. In fact, I can see their stance in what we call the New Gambia for our newfound democracy, rule of law, good governance, and the like. They tend to feel that the former president, him coming back, would jeopardize whatever we're building in this country, the likes of EU. I attend workshops and I do hear from them, being the ECOWAS and the EU especially. I haven't had much from the African Union, to be quite honest, even though I attended a workshop in Ghana organized by the AU, where the ruling party and the main opposition were invited. I don't see them much having a stake or interfering in such. But for ECOWAS and EU, it is no secret. Looking into recent happenings in this country about the 3 years Jotna, EU and ECOWAS, they're in it. They're even saying they will not allow anybody to bring down the president or to force him to step down because it is unconstitutional. I think as Gambians, we know what our constitution says. So somebody from ECOWAS being part of it doesn't mean they have to dictate how our country has to function. When, you know, leaders make promises, citizens have a right to take them to task. I think it's fair enough to look at both sides and to take parties considering this one said this yesterday, that's what led to this today, then, you know, issuing, I would call it a threat, because if you say you are not going to allow it and people force, which means you can also use force. So I would rather see it as a threat. So to answer your question, I don't expect much from them, but like I said, we wouldn't let it lying down. We'll keep pursuing it to make so whatever it takes, also our demands, they will look into it.
The militants came out in full force Was it a show that the APRC is a force to be reckoned with in the political landscape?
Definitely. We've been saying it that we're the biggest political party in this country. Videos and pictures don't lie. We tell people, we just don't talk for the sake of talking. And looking into our rallies, our meetings we've been having, the number has not decreased. It keeps increasing. That is a sign to show that APRC is a force to be reckoned with. And this is giving government a sleepless nights. Because when they expect the party to die, it's getting stronger and the number is increasing. Definitely it is worrying, and it is no surprise that we're hearing certain comments threatening the APRC and its leadership, you know, especially our supreme leader, that if he comes to this country, he'll be arrested and the like. I think they have to accept the fact that Gambians love the APRC. They cherish the party and they're coming in their large numbers. Some do talk to us personally. Some call and made promises. I left the party, I am back again. Some told us I was just sitting on the fence to watch, but now both feet are in. We've been hearing this. It's very, very assuring. But people who keep doubting us, I believe it's just their dislike for the party and its leadership. That's why they continue to live in denial.
I will now take you back to some pronouncements made by the Honorable Minister of Justice, Attorney General, Minister of Justice, when he openly said during the legal year celebrations that come Jammeh into this country, he will be arrested and tried and possibly convicted. I mean, the statement was out there. Was that statement something you expected from him?
Exactly. It's no surprise to us. Anytime the Justice Minister talks, we APRC, we know his dislike and hatred for the former president and the party itself. He never hides his feelings. I listened to his interview with BBC. He stated it, that he never had anything to do with the former president. He never had the opportunity to meet him, but he's been fighting him ever since that coup d'etat happened in '94. From '94 up to date, he never liked him and he's been always against him. He said it himself, and we know that is a hard fact. Sometimes I said it is part of the criteria to be appointed by the current president, that you must have a certain dislike and hatred for the former president and the APRC party, because most of them in positions with their portfolios, whenever they talk publicly, you see it reflect in them. So I begin to wonder, is it part of the criteria for this president to appoint you to cabinet or give you certain position that you must express or be a person who definitely doesn't like the former president or the APRC party? But I would say I don't expect such from leaders to say that publicly. For others who don't like us, they would say yes. They'll be very happy and jubilated.
Did you see him as prosecutor and judge at the same time when he made that statement?
I've said it in my interviews. I said he doesn't own this country, neither did he write or wrote the constitution that exists, and he's not the president. He has a position to man, and he could say whatever, but the law belongs to everybody. It is the supreme law of the land. Arresting somebody, you could give others to be arrested, but you cannot prosecute based on your own whims and desires. There are laws, you know, that is clearly stated what crime should a person be prosecuted for. And it is not like the TRRC where people just go and make narrations and it is recorded. In a court of law, you must bring credible witnesses, and even giving false statement, you could be charged, you know, for lying or defamation of character, etc. So there are no fears. Arresting somebody is one thing. Prosecuting them based on evidence, not narrations, is another thing. So we have nothing to be feared for. And we also believe he himself has violated many laws as per the constitution of this country, and even selling assets of the former president. To us, it is illegal. And these are all binding by laws. And the president coming back, he is going to land into hot soup. So that's why they will never be happy to have him back in this country. But like we always say, there's no law in this country that can stop him from coming back. Prosecuting him, that is up to government. It is their, so if it is their desire and wish, they can go ahead, but nobody owns the law. We've seen it in the case of Jahumpa Sise, Mata Jahumpa Sise, Yankuba Ture. He did that, he lost it. And currently, Yankuba Ture, his case going on. He's going to lose it again. I think the only one they've achieved so far prosecuting, you know, and achieving something, that's Killer Ace. So he can keep trying. We don't have worries about that.
You're watching Talk to Malik Jones, and my guest On the program today is the deputy spokesperson of the APRC party, Mr. Dodou. Mr. Ja, let me take you to some of the things that have been happening within the party. Recently, there have been expulsions and counter-expulsions of some of your members. Some of them are within the country, others are in the diaspora. What do you make out of that?
Very, very crucial. And I would say the party executive has been very patient. It all started since 2017. You could look at the issue from 2017 coming to the end of 2019, like 2 years. We've been moving on with such. It happened during a time where there was a misunderstanding. Some would call it impasse. When Emeba claimed to be the leader of the APRC, there were factions. People were divided somehow when it comes to the leadership of the party. And these people expelled, they were part of those who were supporting Emeba for the leadership, them and alongside others. Later, the truth was known and people knew where the true leadership of the party was. Some apologized, others just moved on for their love for the party. They never wanted to create chaos. But these people insisted that hook, line, sinker, the current party, the executive, they must go. For whatever reasons best known to them, so they've been creating propaganda in many occasions, especially whenever we have events or activities, rallies coming up, they will release audios telling our militants, don't attend, don't buy their asobi, don't buy their t-shirts, these executives, they are corrupt, you know, they are not serving the interests of the party. We've been very patient with that. And they went further to make severe allegations, very serious ones. First, they said President Adama Barrow gave our interim party leader $11 million for him to sell the party. I've never had a party being sold to an individual. To an extent, you sell the party and you force the people to join. And up to date, and I said in several interviews, then Barrow has lost his 11 million because the party still exists. Then Barrow is the one who lost. Again, they claim that Barrow promised to give the executive 40 million so that we'll go against 3 years. And, you know, these are kind of allegations that are serious. All this is geared towards creating chaos within the party. So we told them enough is enough. We've engaged them publicly, privately, we did everything, but they persisted. So we knew they had ulterior motive in trying to divide the party or to create chaos in between. And when we released a press release, said that we expelled them, I sent that. They edited it, change certain wordings and put our names, and also said they consulted our Supreme Party leader. They've also expelled us. So it wanted to create some chaos. We said, wait. And they said we have no rights to expel them. Only the Supreme Party leader has that right. So that amounted to us getting to him. He was hearing and seeing everything going on, for him to come up with an audio to clear the air for the party to move ahead and for examples to be set. So this is what led to it, and up to date they're quiet. And even one of them, when after being expelled, he sent a press release stating Kitim Jaju and Emeba, nobody can separate him and them, which shows that this was his intention, that such people has to be in charge of the party and not the correct one. So it was for the better good of the party. Some said you don't need to expel people, we need them. Politics is about numbers. We said, but not people whom you know that their intention is to create chaos within. I said the audios they've been releasing, things they've been saying, the allegations they're putting to the executive, let them go to any political party and do the same, they'll be expelled. So such people, you don't keep them in your party. If they think they have people around them, they're popular enough, let them form their own party.
The APRC is in a house and they've got their windows closed, but they're seeing what is happening in the outside.
Exactly.
I'm alluding to some of the things that are going on right now. You've got these 3-year Jotna people, you've got the 5 years people, 5-year supporters also out there. How do you view this mismatch of things? I mean, 3 years and 5 years over there. What is the take of the APRC on this?
Our stance has been very clear from the onset. We're neither part of the 3 years nor the 5 years. People kept asking, we told them we'll be the referees. We'll be looking into the game. What we're after is a peaceful Gambia, a Gambia that would definitely serve the interests of all Gambians. This is our interest. looking into it will blame the president, His Excellency. He is the head of state, commander-in-chief of this country, which means peace, tranquility of the Gambia lies on his shoulders. And we've been calling for a national dialogue, which he never hit to. But instead, few people were mobilized to go to State House and said they have given him that 5 years mandate and the like. That was never the solution, and we said it. And that only fueled and, you know, strengthened the 3 years Jotna, whatever the ambitions they had. Hadn't been you engage them into dialogue and discuss certain issues, we believe these issues could have been resolved. But when you ignore the demands of the people, what they're calling for, you undermine them, definitely it could catch you by surprise. And that's what happened when 3 years Jotna came out. People never expected they will be, you know, definitely pull such a crowd, which warranted also 5 years saying they're not into politics, etc. We don't believe that. We know that they're into politics. They're part of the NPP party. That's no secret. They can deny over and over again. We saw the people that were involved when they made that call. You know, ministers came out, MPs came out, claiming to be private citizens. We said, come on, private citizens are sitting at home. And why only uphold that the Constitution gives 5 years mandate? The Constitution has given more than that. And yet still, when we make our demands per the Constitution, they don't want to give us that right as citizens of this country. They're looking at us with one lens. They are APRC. The Constitution states that former presidents can reside in the country. So why don't they want that to happen? It's a constitutional right. Does it only say 5 years? I don't think so. So if we have to uphold the Constitution, we have to uphold its entirety, not a portion of it that is to your interest. So we're seeing politics being played in a way to deceive Gambians, making them believe we're fighting for the Constitution and not to our interests. And if you ask them about where they get sponsors, they will just tell you anonymous donors. We're feeling they're not being transparent. And this is small Gambia. You can't hide. No matter what happens or transpire, people you know, will get to know about it. So in such, I would blame the leadership of the country. They could have done more to avoid such, and they could still do more. Look at what EU and ECOWAS did. They intervened and, you know, invited them, had a dialogue, which made them to even postpone their date. So this is what the government should have done, and it's what we've been calling for a national dialogue. Invite stakeholders, talk to them. You could reach an agreement which would be to the interest of both parties, but they ignored that.
There is talk that the Victims Center will launch a protest march contrary to your objectives. What is your take on that?
Thank you very much. They've been making a lot of promises. And Sirif Kijera, for one, I'm not taking him seriously. I am somebody who believes in a person. Whatever you say, live up to it. Don't say this on Monday, then Friday you saying something different. I would just quote what he said, that we should not be giving any permit. That if the government of the day gives us a permit, they will come out on the same day and they will not apply for a permit. Our demonstration will justify them coming out, and they will show to the government that they did not respect the victims. You know, they're not listening to the cry of the victims, etc. He even went further to say that these victims will not appear at you know, the TRRC to testify or to come as witnesses and narrate things that happened to them.
In other words, they're taking the government to ransom.
Exactly. But that never happened. We applied for a permit. It was given. Our demonstration went ahead. All we saw on the social media, they're applying for a permit. Stated at first, I think it was 23rd, which was later shifted to the 25th. So what he said yesterday and what is happening again, these are two different things. And if you talk about victim center, I would say it is politicized. Politicized in a sense, we're seeing people who claim to be activists, but they belong to political parties. The likes of Yankuba Dabo, lawyer Yankuba Dabo, we know that he's UDP. Even Madi Jobate claiming to be an activist, he is UDP. Even that Kijera people are saying he is UDP. So I would say that the victim center is politicized because they're meddling into politics. There are different and several other ways that one can demand their rights. And I believe they should champion the coming back of the former president, because he's the one they're pointing fingers at, that he usurped their rights, he violated their human rights, etc. But in his absence, how can justice be served? I think they should champion the cause for the president, former president to come back so that whatever they're demanding for justice to serve, it would take place. But definitely, I don't foresee that. They're raising accounts, GoFundMe. I think it is not only to fighting for the victims, but they also want to get something in their pockets without doubt, because we're seeing people donating, contributing to this proposed demonstration that they want to do. So definitely there's some politics in it, and this is not something we expected. And I've heard from some interviews that people did calling that it is against regulations, because the Victim Center registered as a charitable organization. So a charitable organization, what would make you go into protesting and getting involved in politics, which is definitely not legal.
Let me move you away from that, and let's look at the political landscape. There are 14 parties registered for this small, little, beloved Gambia of less than 2 million people. Are you not surprised? Is this cake not going to be divided into bits and pieces so that at the end of the day, there is nothing to be significant of some of the parties' challenge on the road to State House?
Definitely it is worrying, Mr. Jones. Like you said, looking at the population of the country, not only the population, but the number of registered voters. We're talking about 800,000 registered voters and 14 political parties. How would this be divided? And again, these new political parties, what do they have specific or unique, different from the existing parties? That is a question to ask. If my party, what I stand for, what I call for, is the same what they're also calling for, definitely this is just duplicate of interest. And at the end of the day, IEC themselves, it's like they're saying there will be 20 or 30 registered political parties adding to the existing ones. Why should the IEC allow that? Definitely, we said multi-party system, but multi-party system already exists. This, I think we have to change the name from multi-party and we call it to, extra multi-party system, because it is out of the bounds of what people expected. And again, I am sensing something. I'll be saying it now. People can take it to the bank. Whenever it happens, they would know I dilated on it, because I also do my own research and investigation. The IEC, they want to change the cost of voting from the marbles to paper ballot. They've been pushing this, and I can tell you almost 99% of the political parties, they're saying no to that. They say even if this has to take place, we must buy time for it to sensitize the people. Voter education must take place for our people to know about what paper balloting involves. And I tell them that paper balloting have different systems. Which one are we going to use? It's not as easy as they take it. IT is my field, and I know how it goes about. And again, I said paper ballot is more liable to election fraud. People say, no, this, and I said, for example, give me the contract to print those paper ballots. Whoever I want to be president will be president. And if they doubt me, let them try, just to show them that there's no guarantee of free and fair elections when it comes to paper balloting. Exactly, depending on what system would be applied. Now, looking into countries that are more democratic than us, that have a bigger number when it comes to population size, you go there, you only find 2 parties. So why is it that we must build that mentality of having these multi-party, 14 parties? And it's not a full stop yet. We could expect more, as the IEC has said. And again, what I am suspecting, let people take it to the bank, most of these parties coming into play when elections are due, don't be surprised that all of them will rush to the president, create a coalition, so that they will say the president has the backing of several parties, so definitely he's going to win outright. I am picking this from some of the people around the president who claim that 70% of Gambians are in support of the president. I said, wait a minute, how can you achieve that when Coalition 2016 could produce that percentage? After 7 parties coming together with other independent candidates, you cannot produce 70%. And again, I heard from the former chairperson for North Bank from UDP saying 75% of Gambians are now with the president. Why are they giving such figures in percentage? Are they up to something? Time will tell. So most of these new parties, Gambians, don't be surprised when they make a U-turn and all rush to the president in the name of coalition, who are trying to prove that they have the numbers, they'll come out with this. That's why we're saying no to paper ballot. We'll stick with the marbles, and we'll make sure that what transpired in 2016 will not even repeat to have two different results. So we're watching the space, and we're doing everything possible. But definitely 14 political parties in this tiny Gambia is definitely uncalled for. And above all, some of these parties registering, they're not meeting the criteria. Not my words. We had a workshop with the Women's Bureau based on their research. It's part of the criteria to register a political party. You must have bureaus in all the regions. But the Women's Bureau, their statistics and research has shown only 3 political parties have met that criteria, which is the UDP, GDC, and the APRC. Then how comes other political parties are registering without fulfilling such criteria? What is the IEC up to?
In other words, before registration, before the IEC gives its stamp on registering a political party, those criteria must be fulfilled.
Exactly. If you claim to represent or to establish a party that represents Gambia as a whole, then you must have offices in such places that would serve as a liaison between you and the people.
I haven't realized that has taken place. What are you telling the IEC now?
They must uphold the laws. A law
is somebody taking them to task?
As of now, not yet. Being a member of the IPC committee, the inter-party committee, I think such issues will be discussed there, and we'll have to take a stance on that, because there's a MOU binding all the political parties that registered at the time. These new parties are yet to sign that MOU within the inter-party committee. But it's a concern raised, and these issues have to be looked at. There are some political parties, they only have a national executive committee, and that's it. No other structure in any other region. How are they going to win elections when even in the regions you're not functioning there? We should look into it. Then what's the need of being a political party? If you form a party, it's for you to become a government. You cannot be a government if you don't even have offices and you are being established in certain regions and working with the people. This definitely need to be looked at. Let IEC not only follow the money that people are paying to register, but to make sure that the rules or the criteria to establish a party, it is definitely established.
You've just struck on the chord. Some people say the IEC needs money, and therefore, since political parties upon registration, one of the requirements is to pay $1 million into them.
Exactly.
Is it true that the IEC is strapped for money and therefore will register?
Their source of funding and talking about their budgets and accounts is not known. So I think they will be in a better position to say, but we believe these registrations is giving them millions. Taking into account, let's say, about 4 to 5 parties has registered at a very short span. That's about $4 to $5 million. That's definitely money. But is that enough to sustain the IEC? Looking into the responsibilities they have countrywide when it comes to transportations and other logistics, definitely, is that enough? That should be the question. And again, who is behind funding the IEC? Is government taking responsibility? Is it the international bodies like EU and ECOWAS? Are they supporting? And when they support, they don't give you money for free. They also would interfere in the operationalization of the institution, of which recently we've seen, especially EU. We've read the 2017 report, the EU delegation to the Gambia, and some of these recommendations they're making, having that interest for demarcation, again, is definitely worrying. We're saying before you demarcate, reducing some of these constituencies as example from 5 to 2, whilst we have empty seats at the National Assembly, why don't you increase? I believe we should reduce if the capacity is not there. But having empty seats, we expect that this would increase the number of constituencies so that more people would be in parliament rather than reducing. But what is the interest of EU in demarcation? Even the name of the IEC being changed in the draft constitution, calling it IBEC, Independent Boundaries and Electoral Commission, because they want the IEC to be in charge of deciding about the boundaries and at the same time being the referee for elections. We found that it should be separated. Let the select committee at Parliament be responsible or work hand in glove with the IEC.
Is it that the IEC is playing the game, I put my mouth where my money is?
Exactly. We're seeing
and why should Gambians Why should Gambians tolerate that?
It's a point which puts a question mark to this new draft constitution, because there are certain laws. For instance, even when you come to the electoral laws, they've consulted parties, but recommendations we gave and what the IEC came with is definitely different, which shows they consult people, we tell them what we want, but they come out differently stating otherwise. IEC have been insisting that political parties must disclose their financial transactions. And we've seen in the new draft constitution is captured that all political parties should submit their financial transactions to the IEC. Failure of which to do so, you will be deregistered. Government does not fund opposition or political parties. They don't give us any subvention, neither does the IEC. Why should you make it a matter of must? To the extent you will ban political parties if they don't comply. So these are issues, we don't call it democratic. They're imposing on political parties. And if just looking at that issue, all political parties could say no and we vote against this draft constitution. Because you cannot impose on people, especially when you seek their consent and they've given you reasons that definitely were genuine, we justify why they are doing that. So definitely there are a lot of laws in the draft constitution that people will find it very difficult to vote yes. I'll just quote another one. It's not based on party line or the 1997 constitution was during APRC. I'll talk about this law about people being convicted that they will not qualify to contest for the presidency. I said it should be explanatory. For example, I take the case of Lawyer Dodou. I am APRC. I don't care about UDP. I give facts and what would interest the whole Gambia. He went out to demonstrate, demanding the dead body of Solo Sandeng. Per the constitution, you cannot demonstrate without being given a permit. He was tried, found guilty, he went to jail for that. Should that justify that he will never contest for the presidency again? I'm not talking at the aspect of Lawyer Dodou. Anybody could be victim tomorrow. I feel that is not fair. If when people are convicted, let the people decide. If majority says they want him or her, so be it. I believe that should be democracy, that should be justice. He did not steal money, he didn't kill anybody, he did not commit any atrocious crime. Only to go out and demonstrate peacefully. He broke the law, yes, he went to jail, so why should he be disqualified to contest for the presidency? As far as I am concerned, that is absolutely not fair.
It's a little over 1 year, 10 months for the next general presidential elections. And I'm sure the APRC, you have loyal militants who are supporting you. You either have more than you see a reduction in your in the number of your militants. What do you think will be your performance come 2021? Will you form the next government?
We're very hopeful looking into our numbers. We'll either form the government or be part of it, depending on
that's interesting.
On which constitution will be going.
You will be part of the next government.
Exactly.
Does that mean the APRC will be open to any form of a coalition with any other political party?
Yes, that's why I said depending on which constitution by then would be in place. For instance, the 1997 constitution states simple majority. If it is about simple majority, we're hopeful that we're the biggest party in this country. If the draft constitution passes all challenges and it's in place, it is calling for 50+1. You must have more than 50% of the vote, which I see impossible for any political party. Looking into the statistics of the 2016 election, no party can pull more than 50%. That I can guarantee, no matter what happens. So in such, you can do it alone. You will have to partner with others. Either you are for second or the like. Others will need your support to back them in order to occupy that seat. That's why I say we'll either make the government or we will be part of it. Again, there are people calling for APRC to be banned. I said, which laws justify that in the Constitution? I would like to know, does the president have executive powers that he can ban political parties? If yes, I say he won't be there for long. If the APRC backs any party, it is over for President Adama Barrow. That without doubt, we have the numbers. And we have started working now We're not waiting for elections. We're coming up with our membership ID card end of this month or early by next month. We want to create a database to know the total number of our militants, to make sure they will register both home and in the diaspora. And through which this database we will know those that have the national documents and those who don't have. Then our target is to make sure that all of them will have these national documents so that we'll prepare for the election. So with that database, it will help us to know our militants, what is the number and how many people are ready to go and cast their votes.
What will be your stand in the event the national document becomes a problem for some of your militants?
Definitely, we're all citizens of this country, and you cannot deny people of their citizenry. And when such happens, we'll make sure that we look what into the law says, and we'll stand by them to make sure it is executed. This is something we're not going to take lightly. We know there are plans in place to deny people that they feel are not supporting them or are within the APRC. It has already started and going on, and we've been countering it. There are people who, when they were denied, we tried to step in, play a role, and they were granted. I believe this, we should do away with it. And people must be registered in order to vote. Sometimes I tell people election is far. When it draws near, that's when people will stand up to make sure that they get the required documents. And when it reaches that state, if people are not registered, then if you don't get the certain percentage you are looking for, it becomes futile for even elections to take place. Looking into the draft constitution, they say 50% of the registered voters must vote. So if people don't register, how would you get the 50%? And in that 50%, 75% must say yes. If you don't get people to vote, how would you come to that 75%? Which means our country will be at a standstill because the people will not be able to decide what will take this country forward.
Let me take your attention now to the draft constitution. Has the APRC been able to impact upon the draft?
Exactly. We even had a one-day workshop looking into it, and there are areas we flagged. We think it's a matter of concern. We've raised it. It's all about whether things we flag will be considered or put into considerations. Some of these we feel is not explanatory. And you can't just living like that. It will create a lot of chaos in future, and it will open doors for lawyers being entitled to interpret it. Will they interpret as those who put it on paper? You know, at times when people put up laws, there are reasons and intentions why, and they're the best people who can tell you the very reasons why those laws were enacted. Just reading the text doesn't justify that you can interpret that. We're saying, why don't you put it in a simple format that whoever reads it can understand? And there are issues that are not explanatory. I'll give an example. For instance, the draft constitution is stating in the issue of second round of voting. For example, if the runner-up comes up, let's say, with 37% of the votes, and the other two, they said if there are two that are level or bracket in second, one could give it up for the others. If not, both of them will continue in the second round. Now, let's say nobody will give it up for the other. Both of them are going in the second round. One comes up with 37%, the rest is shared by the others. 36% example as majority. So we go 37 rather. We go into the second round. Now, one of those two that were level or headed, bracketed on second, happens to have 37%. And the other two have less than that. So which means in the first round, the one that has 36% cannot, 37% rather, cannot become or emerge the winner. We go into second round, one that has a lesser percentage, 36%, finally will form the government of the day. For us, that is not democratic. People could still challenge it. So that must be explanatory, stating the reasons why it has to be accepted in the second round to avoid chaos in future. And again, it is stating in the draft constitution the duration at which after elections, the period we have to wait, especially when there's election dispute, partisans, etc. There's stating in one section that the Ministry of Justice will oversee or become in charge of the country at that time. What if the Minister of Justice is a foreigner? Because our constitution allows a foreigner to be appointed as Minister of Justice, which means at that period a foreigner will oversee the country. So the duration that was there, like the 1 month period, they want to change that to about 10 days or 19 days, which again, if things are not really sorted out, it could land the country into chaos. That's why we said the draft constitution, a lot has to be looked at. We are hopeful perhaps they will go back and look into these issues and make changes. But in cases that these changes are not made, definitely we don't see the need why we have to say yes to that. And again, talking about impeaching the president, they're saying if parliament can impeach the president. For example, they said the president's health, is severe to the extent he cannot continue being president. An independent tribunal has to be set up. By who? The president. Again, the Chief Justice has to be inclusive, judges and lawyers, etc. But that panel, if they see to it, yes, what the parliament has shown over it's true, it has to go back to parliament for 2/3 to vote yes. I said again, facts being established. What if 2/3, you don't have 2/3 votes, which means it will be null and void. After having proof that he has to be impeached, I said it doesn't make sense. And if they said no, Parliament cannot continue to debate further on the issues. I said these things need to be looked at. We cannot just say we want a new constitution while what's in it, we're not looking at it thoroughly, that is not reflecting the interests of Gambians. And lastly, just to point out that, they're saying that MPs should be empowered. The president, his power should be reduced and given to the parliamentarians. I said then, the way and manner we pick up candidates for MPs should be changed, because sometimes mostly it's based on tribal lines, party lines, etc. Then we should go in for competent people. You cannot empower people who are in parliament and not serving the interests of the power. Which means power lies or is vested in people who, again, in turn, does not even know what the constitution says, and not implementing why they are in parliament. We see people switching over from one side to another, serving the interests of the president rather than people who vote them to power. So all these things must change before you empower them, because this is what will determine the lives of Gambians.
Mr. Dodou, thank you very much. We're running out of time.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you very much
It's
for
always
taking
a
your
pleasure.
time to join me on the program, Talk to Malik Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Jones.
That was the deputy spokesperson for the APRC, Mr. Dodou. He was talking to me on Talk to Malik Jones. Until then, bye-bye.